stay tuned because for the next 60 minutes, Motorsports Unlimited is on the air. Hi, I'm Jerry Bryant, and these are the lovely ladies of motorsports. And all this hour, we're going to have 60 minutes of action-packed excitement. All kinds of exciting things will happen. And we got the famous Bill Wildt, and we got all kinds of other good stuff that's happening all this hour. Motorsports Unlimited, 60 minutes of non-stop action. So let's go to the studio right now, huh?
Today we're going to learn about Nitro cars. That's right, the awesome, ground-pounding, earth-shaking drag strip tearers that always bring the crowds to the fences. We're going to find out what it takes to compete with one of these monsters, and we're going to do it with a longtime Chicagoland racer, Tom Motry's Drastic Plastic. And that's not all. We're also going to talk with a young man who we met some 5 years ago when he was racing junior dragsters. He's all grown up now, and you're not going to believe what he's driving. We've got a lot to do, so let's get started by joining Bill and the girls in search of Nitro action.
Today we have an absolutely fascinating story for you, and actually we should say a couple of stories, not just one story. First of all, one of the things that I've been trying to do on Motorsports Unlimited for at least 11 years now is to help you develop an appreciation for fuel cars. I'm talking about nitro methane drag racing cars, and we've got a local effort here that's actually a pretty famous local effort. We've got a couple of guys in this area that have a special division of nitro cars that they've been campaigning for a while, and they have kindly consented today to help us understand these cars and hopefully help you develop an appreciation for them. You'll, as the program goes on, you'll begin to understand why this is important. But in addition to a nitromethane car, we have got a great human interest story. Chuck, if you would, bring your shot down here. Make it nice and wide, because this beautiful car called Grounded is not a nitromethane car. This, in fact, is an alcohol car, but there's a great story that goes with it. And first of all, you are?
I'm Greg Nikolewski Jr.
And this is not the first time you've been on Motorsports Unlimited, is it?
No, it's not.
When was the other time?
A few years ago on Memorial Day when I was like 12, racing junior dragster.
So what we have here is an example of a youngster that started out in junior dragsters, and we've presented junior dragsters to you several times on Motorsports Unlimited. What we have is, after 5 years, what happens to one of these youngsters, and this young man is exhibit A on all the good things that can happen if your youngster is involved in motorsports. And I don't mean to embarrass you, but your dad's pretty proud of you, and he told me you're pretty special, and we're going to play up on that just a little bit. Now, we're going to be back to you and find out a little bit about your effort. I want to introduce all the players on today's program before we get started. So yeah, we've got an alcohol car here with a 16-year-old that runs it and is licensed by the NHRA. We're going to get to that story in a moment. But now the nitromethane story, and of course on Motorsports Unlimited, we always start with the pretty girls, and you are?
Renee Prestige,
And where are you from?
Oakland.
And?
Tom Motry from Lockport.
And?
Rick Kraft from Union Mills, Indiana.
And?
Bart Shaver from Huntley, Illinois.
Okay, who's the one that has to do the clutch on this car? Let me see a hand. You're the one they stick with that.
Yeah, I'm the dirty man behind the engine.
You must have taken 3 showers today. You look perfect.
Well, they spin me around in the mud. It comes out pretty good.
Who mixes the fuel?
I do.
You handle the fuel mixing?
Yes.
Okay. We're going to talk to you about this entire effort, and folks, believe me, when you find out a little bit more about what it takes to run a fuel car, you'll have a whole lot more appreciation for these devices than you ever did before. One good thing I found out here today, the last time I checked, nitromethane was $48 a gallon. You guys say it's come all the way down to like 25 or something.
And right now it's at 20. It's really taken a nosedive, which is good.
Well, that's wonderful, especially when you go through how many gallons per run?
We use 10 to 12.
10 to 12 gallons per run, so it's a good thing the cost has come down a little bit. In any event, we're going to find out all about the Drastic Plastic car. This is another one of those things, folks, that I want you to take pride in. This is a Chicagoland guy. This is a Chicago area guy that goes around the country racing, and I want you to kind of be behind these guys. This is one of your own that goes out on the road competing. We're going to find out all about it in a minute. Now, whenever we've got Peggy here, everybody knows that we always put Peggy to the test. Peggy, come on over here, kid. And I did not set this up in advance, folks. I didn't do this. I want her to take and identify some of these parts. First of all, what have we got here?
Hold on. I know it.
I know you know.
Oh, geez. I'm stuck on that one first.
Okay, I'll give you. I'll let you think
I know
about.
that's a crankshaft.
Very good. I was going to get to that. You got crankshaft. Now, what about this? Hold on a minute. What have we got here?
Is that? Ooh, I don't know what that is.
Oh, come on.
Fuel? I don't know.
This is a piston.
Oh, that's a piston? Okay, that's the rod.
Now you're getting, and here is a piston and rod all put together.
Okay.
Now, do they look unusual, different than the ones you've seen before?
Not.
The big aluminum
No,
rod
they
doesn't
look-
strike you as being unusual?
Well, it looks the same to me, I think. No,
Well, okay,
maybe not.
it's different than what you've seen
I'm
before.
not, I don't look at them all the time. I just remember it had this, like the handle and then the circle.
Well, now I'm going to really impress you folks, because
Want me to see- do you have a different one I could see?
I hope if they have one here, we'll show it to you when we get in,
Okay.
because I don't want to get into all this right now, but I want to because I want to really dazzle you with how far Peggy has come since she's been on our program. I'm going to lift the cylinder head up just a little bit, and I'm going to show it to the audience. And Peggy, you're going to tell me what kind of a cylinder head this is, and I'm looking for one 4-letter word. Oh no! Oh no!
I don't know.
Take a look.
One 4-letter word?
Look at the combustion chamber.
Tell me. I don't know what you're looking for.
Hemi.
Oh, that's a Hemi? I don't know what the Hemi is.
Well,
I
folks-
mean, I've seen it, but it's you did that to me again.
You better go back to your place. You know, Brenda DeSalva is going to kill me because she thinks that I make the girls look stupid, but I thought for sure you
I
know
don't
that.
see Hemis that often, though. You know, I don't sit and work with it every day. You know, it's a little different.
But do you see it now?
No, not really.
Oh, God. Folks, we're going to work with Peggy a little bit more. In any event, this will give you an idea what the program is about today. We're talking about a nitro car, what it takes to run one of these cars, why they're so different, why they're so expensive. And on top of that, we've got a great public relations story, or human interest story, I should say, with a young man that started, at least on Motorsports Unlimited, some 5 years ago in a half-scale dragster, and now is running an alcohol funny car. This is pretty big-time stuff, and of course, when we've got a girl on Motorsports Unlimited that we haven't had on the program before, I'd like to put her to work right away. If you would, I'd like you to take a look at our camera over there, and I'd like you to tell the folks.
Don't go away, folks. We'll be right back.
Now that you've met all the participants on today's show, let's get specific and learn what it takes to campaign a fuel car. I
want to tell our audience that it's about 28 degrees out right now. And yes, by the way, the boating season is in fact over, even though we had you out boating just literally a week ago. So this might be a little bit awkward because in order to start this car, we're going to have to take the thing outside. So in advance of doing this, I want to tell you exactly what we are going to do. He already made me up a little sheet here, and this gives you an idea. Essentially what happens when you make a run with a car like this, you have to completely rebuild the motor in between every run. Now, we were explaining to Susan on the way here, what is a run? What does that mean?
Okay, you were telling me it's kind of like from one stoplight to another stoplight. It's about 4 seconds, and you have to rebuild the whole motor, and it costs about $10,000 a year. And let's see.
She's got a few pieces of this right. Let me see if I can do it. A drag race essentially is a 2-block acceleration contest. That's 1,320 feet. You start from a dead stop, and the race is over in 1,320 feet. Typically, depending on the class of cars, there are cars that it takes 25 seconds to do it, and there are top-fuel dragsters that do it in 4.5 seconds, and anything in between. These cars typically will run into 6s, am I right?
No, we're in the high 5s now.
You run into 5s?
Yeah, our best to date is a 560.
Wow, that's well into the 5s.
Well, there was only once, too.
Wow, well, congratulations, not bad, yes.
Okay, I remembered also you said they usually go like 300 miles an hour, but these are going like around 200 miles an hour?
Well, again, depending on the class, the very fastest of the fast, the top fuel dragsters and everything. In fact, I think a pass was just made, I've forgotten who did it, of 320 plus.
I think it was Joe Amano. He ran 321.
321 miles an hour. But again, it depends on the class the car runs in and all that. The point I'm making here is we are talking about a run in their case that lasts about 6 seconds. And so that means that the life expectancy of this engine and an engine like this costs about how much?
Well, we kind of average it over a year, and a run is like right around $1,000 to maintain the motor and all the parts inside the car.
Right, and we're going to get to that in a little bit because this is an important part of what these guys are doing, and I don't want to complicate it right now, but the fact of the matter is when a model makes a run, it's about $10,000 a run.
Oh, every bit of it, every bit.
So for a 4.5 second piece of entertainment, when a model makes a pass down the drag strip, that's $10,000 in expenses.
Yes.
And part of the reason is because every time you make a pass with these Nitro motors, you've got to take them apart.
Oh, yes, you have to look at all the components because you just don't know what you might hurt.
You're exactly right. Wait a minute, we've got a question down here. Peggy, I've got a slippery floor here, so forgive me for awkwardly moving around.
How long does it typically take you between each run to put the motor, to redo it again each time?
Well, I can answer that question, but if I'm wrong, tell me. I believe they allow you an hour and a half, am I correct?
Yeah, about an hour and a half.
Right, in other words, that's by rules. You've got to be ready. They can call you up again in an hour and a half, and you better be ready.
Yeah, they can not allow you to race if you're not back in an hour and a half.
Okay, so that means these guys have got these things down. Everything about the way these motors are built and constructed is so they can field strip them very quickly because they do have to do a complete engine rebuild in an hour and a half. Sounds amazing, doesn't it?
Well, you have to have all the parts there, I mean, and then some. I mean, you have to have doubles, triples, and whatever, because you never know what's going to break on each pass, right?
Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Now we're getting to why people should appreciate these cars. Is she kind of onto something there?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we usually carry a spare motor, a couple sets of spare heads, transmission, clutches, rods and pistons, everything.
Everything, and are going to use them.
If needed.
Yeah, exactly. And the motors have to come apart completely between every pass, and I call it a complete rebuild. It really is a rebuild.
Yes, we check all the bearings, we change the rods and pistons to a new set. Not that the old ones are bad, but it's just quicker. Check the heads, and if they need to be changed, we change the heads. We look at the supercharger, we service the clutch, we look at the rear end, we do the trans, pack the parachutes, mix fuel in an hour and a half.
I brought these notes out for nothing now, right? he just went through the whole thing, what I was going to tell you that they were going to show us. Now, I know you got a question, but hold on, I want to finish up with this real quick because when Peggy joined us some 3.5 years ago, Peggy's been with us now 3.5 years. Her first show was the IHRA Summer Nationals. Do you remember?
NHRA.
IHRA.
Oh, was that?
It was IHRA.
Yes, you're right.
IHRA Summer Nationals, and as a matter of fact, one of the things that surprised you more than anything is they obviously had top fuel dragsters there. When we focused on the top fuel dragsters, was every time these guys brought them back to the pits, the motors came apart, and there was like 15 guys around every one of them.
They were all over. It was just incredible how everybody's just into it. Everybody has their own job on the vehicle, to get it done.
So when you run nitromethane, you better be prepared to take these things apart and rebuild them over and over and over again. Am I right?
Yes.
So that's part of the problem with nitro cars. Tons of power. I've said it before on Motorsports Unlimited. 2 things brings the crowd to the fences at drag strips from my observations. Jet cars and nitro cars. Agreed?
I do, yes.
The problem is all that thunder and lightning that you so enjoy is really hard on parts.
A lot of homework.
Yes, you had a question.
Yeah, what's the difference between the nitro cars and the alcohol cars as far as speed or
Probably the best way to compare it, it's a great question. And you can help me on this a little bit. The best way to compare it is because we happen to have one right here. Chuck, well, you can't get your camera shot on it now. I don't think you can get a little bit of the nose of it here. We've got this is an alcohol funny car, probably a top alcohol funny car. Right. And what kind of speed is it going to run?
It should run in the lower sixes and a little over 200, 220.
And a nitro funny car?
Should run in the mid fives, 250.
Right. So, well, no, nitro cars, their force is up to close to 300 miles an hour.
Yeah, he's run 300, actually.
He's run 300. So it's about 100 miles an hour and a quarter mile.
Okay.
It's a huge difference. Hold on, Peggy. I know you got a question. I'm coming down. I saw your hand. Okay. This is a little awkward here today, folks. Forgive me. Yes.
I know there is a difference, but what do you have to do technically with the engines to run alcohol versus the nitros?
Okay, we're going to get confused here on the alcohol thing. So before we get into that, we're going to answer that question, Peggy, because that's what the program is going to be about. We're going to answer that because remember, when you pour nitro in, you can double, triple, quadruple the horsepower. Am I right?
Yes.
And blow everything out of the bottom of the motor.
Yes.
Exactly. Now, what he's going to do is they're going to take this car outside, and when they take it outside, what we're going to do for you, because we want you to see this and learn to appreciate what these guys do, you're going to do a warm-up, which means you're going to check the clutch and check for oil leaks. What else?
We're going to look at the pipes to make sure all the cylinders are running. The mist.
How can you tell that they're running?
The mist that comes out of them, we run them rich at an idle to where that doesn't burn the fuel completely, so you can tell by the mist. Of which cylinder is a little richer than the other one, and if we have to make any adjustments at that point, we do.
Okay, and you started on gasoline, though, correct?
Right.
And then you turn it over to nitro?
Yes.
Okay, and I've seen this done before, obviously, a lot of times, and there is a distinct difference in how they sound.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you'll notice.
We'll definitely notice. So we're going to do all that for you today, folks. Now, what they're going to do now is they're going to take this car and they're going to take it outside. Obviously, we can't fire it up indoors. We would poison ourselves, I would imagine.
I think so.
Even though I kind of like the nitro smell. Wait, Peggy, again? I got to keep you closer, Peggy. That's okay. It's okay. I'm happy to come over here. I want you guys to participate. Yes.
You don't normally run in this kind of weather, do you? Is it going to affect it?
You know, I'll tell you something. Interestingly enough, they make more power. Interestingly enough, colder, denser air makes more power, but I don't think you run many drag races in 28 degrees.
We did it once. We went to Englishtown, New Jersey, and it was 27 when we raced.
Made a lot of horsepower and had no traction.
Power was fantastic. Traction was terrible.
Exactly, yes.
Now, why would it make more power? Can you explain that?
Absolutely. The air is denser. Remember, an engine, any engine, it doesn't make, this happens to be a nitro Hemi motor. It doesn't make any difference if it's a Whizzer motorbike. Mm-hmm. An engine is basically an air pump. The more air you can get in and out, and we have to presume that you got an appropriate amount of fuel in to go with it and you burned it to take advantage of it. The more air you can get in and out, the more power you can make. The denser the air, that's more air going in and out for every gulp because it's denser. In real hot weather, they make terrible power because the air is so thin. You're not getting as much air in and out. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so I guess in the winter when it's hard to start your car, that has to do more with the oil?
That has to do with oil, with resistance. It also has to do with your battery doesn't have near as much energy in the cold weather and all that. But as far as the air and the power the motor can make, they make more power in the winter. Am I right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, folks, they're going to take this one outside now, and you're going to enjoy this, so don't go away.
We were all looking forward to hearing the nitro motor run, and while they were getting ready to take the car outside, we thought it would be a good time to take a moment to introduce ourselves.
Hi, I'm Susan Russell.
And I'm Peggy O'Donnell.
That's me, but today I'm a blonde. With that out of the way, and while Tom and the guys are preparing Drastic Plastic, let's take a closer look at the alcohol funny car.
We've got this awesome alcohol funny car. That's not all to the story. We're going to let you reintroduce yourself to the audience first. Hi, can you tell me your name?
Greg DeKlesky Jr.
And you're from?
Lamont, Illinois.
Okay, tell me about your car.
Basic alcohol funny car, race with Midwest funny car circuit. It's really in the Midwest area, Illinois, Wisconsin, around there. And it runs pretty much mid-sevens, approximately like 190 miles an hour.
You look quite young to be driving this. How long have you been doing it?
This is my first year, and I just got out of junior dragster. Yeah.
So that's a pretty big step up. How does it feel?
It was quite a smack in the face, actually. I started out at Frank Holly's getting my Super Comp dragster license at 890, and then that was a week of my birthday, actually, turning 16. So that was like my first street car. And then a week after that, we went to Frank Holly's Top Alcohol Funny Car School, and I ran 655 at 209 miles an hour.
Okay, come on in, Bill. Do you want to come in?
Absolutely,
I
Peggy,
felt
because
a little bad.
we've got a great story going on here, a great story. And first of all, you're right to ask him his age, because Chuck, if you would, bring your camera shot up here, and I hate to chase you around. I know we've got a limited depth of field. I want to show the audience on the front. It says 16 going on number 1. That means that this young man is just 16 years old, and of course, like every other racer, he's shooting to be number 1, and he's got a great car to do it. But that's only a small piece of the story. We had him on our program about 5 years ago, as we mentioned earlier. I believe we did about 5 years ago when you were doing the half-scale dragsters. Am I correct?
Yes, you are.
Okay, and what I want to do is show you Exhibit A of why all the parents out there ought to have their youngsters involved in motorsport. We have a fine young man here, and I will bet, and we have not talked about this, I will bet you are willing to give motorsport credit for all kinds of things that you've learned.
Yes, I am.
It's been a wonderful learning experience. I'm sure you'll agree.
Yep, and I'm getting good grades in school and all that stuff, and making me a better person.
You're exactly correct. Yes, somebody had a question?
Yeah, I wanted to say that I know it's kind of a father and son ordeal, and I think it's really nice, and I've been noticing that that's a lot what goes on in motorsports. It's a lot of fathers and son working on cars and going to car shows, and I think it's real nice because it involves family.
Motorsport at every level is a family-oriented sport at every level, and I don't care if you're doing go-karts or Indy cars, the whole family's, because quite frankly, this is hard. It takes a lot of family support to do it, am I right?
Yes, it does.
Okay, the interesting thing about this is that his father, we were at the Great Lakes Dragaway. This had to be at least 5 years ago. You're saying 5, so it was 5 for sure.
Yeah, pretty sure.
5 years ago, and I spotted 2 cars that had the words "too much" on it, big letters "too much," and one of them was a half-scale dragster, and one of them was a funny car. And so I said, gee, there must be a family connection. And I found out that the youngster was, in fact, just getting started in the half-scale dragsters. These are kind of lawnmower engine dragsters. And the father, of course, was campaigning the funny car. Since those 5 years have gone by, you have since gone to the Frank Hawley School.
Yes, I have.
And apparently passed.
Mm-hmm.
And more importantly than that, you are now licensed by the NHRA.
Yeah, Federal Mogul funny car.
For what?
Federal Mogul.
And that's a legal license. At 16, I didn't know you could do that at 16.
Yep.
Okay, and as a matter of fact, one of the reasons, now I'm going to say, he's got a little bit of advantage on some of these other guys. Tell us what your father owns.
He owns a drag strip in Cedar Falls, Iowa, along with his partner, Bob Shalava.
Okay, so you guys kind of are, you have a dragster at your disposal.
Yeah, practice grounds.
Exactly. So if there's other 16-year-olds out there that don't think they can handle a top alcohol funny car, don't feel bad. You probably don't have a drag strip either, am I right?
Yeah.
So that is kind of a big advantage.
Yes, it is.
Okay, tell us about your car very quickly.
Just a basically alcohol funny car. Runs mid-sevens, like I said before. Runs with Midwest Funny Car Association.
Oh, you run with Jim Wake and the guys? I'm sorry, that's the Pro Stock Association.
Yeah.
The Midwest, help me.
Midwest Funny Car used to have like John Lawson and Dave Harris running.
Yes, and how do you do with those guys?
I came in 7th.
Not bad. How many guys?
Yeah, out of 12 or something. My dad came in 2nd.
Not bad. Yeah. Now, I was going to get to that question. You let the cat out of the bag. The obvious question, who's faster, you or your dad?
My dad.
How long is that going to last?
He pays the crew chief.
Well, he's the one writing the check, so he better have the best stuff, right?
It's a bribe.
Yes, somebody had a question?
I was just going to say, I didn't mean to give you the microphone so quick. I thought I was getting tapped because I was talking too long. You know me, I could go a lot longer. She tapped me, and I thought you wanted to come
Not a bad idea, though. But in any event, my question is, when we get a young man like you, and by the way, nothing pleases me more than when I interviewed a guy, because believe me, folks, he was only about this tall then. Nothing pleases me more to see you guys grow up and be responsible and all that, and trust me when I tell you this. There are not a lot of 16-year-olds around that can handle something like this. What kind of speed do you run with this?
Approximately 190s, around there.
You're in the 190-mile-an-hour area. That's in 2 blocks, folks. This is a handful to handle, but my question to you is, ultimately, where would you like to go?
Top fuel.
You want to end up in those top fuel cars?
Yes.
I bet you're paying a lot of attention to what Tom and these guys are doing with their fuel car.
Yeah, all the time, just watching them, looking what they're doing.
There's a bunch to learn.
Yes, there is.
So your appetite, and this is also a question that I always find very, very important, and again, Chuck, if you haven't done so, make sure we're showing the audience this car because it's absolutely first class and gorgeous. You didn't get dragged into this kicking. It's one of the concerns I have, and people have always talked to me about this because I've been in motorsports my entire life, but I've never had any children. And I've always said, gee, I don't know how it would be if I had a youngster, because there's no guarantee, because your father's interested in racing, that the son will be. And we often find families that will have 2 or 3 sons, and a couple of them have no interest whatsoever in cars or racing, and one is really addicted. My question to you is, did your dad drag you into this kicking and screaming, or did you really want it?
Definitely not. I really wanted to do it. It was not. He said it was an option, and I wanted to do it, so.
Well, that's great, because I always said myself, I think the way I would make the decision, and I guess I'm trying to help people on Motorsports Unlimited, if you have a youngster that's interested out there, I guess if I were in a position where I saw it in the youngster, that this is what he really wanted to do, not what I wanted him to do, but what he really wanted to do, then I would feel blessed because I'd be in a position to really help him.
Yep.
And he's helped a lot?
Yes, he has.
Okay, yes,
Well,
Peggy?
it goes back to the thing, it's something that they're born with or some kind of a drive that really pulls them to it, and there's nothing you can do to stop it, so support it.
Right, we've talked about this on Motorsports Unlimited before. Peggy has the best example right in her household with an 11-year-old son that has really very little interest in this sort of thing, and a 7-year-old that's coming along that's showing a lot of interest. And it's nothing that you encouraged or discouraged one way or the other. It was either there or it wasn't there.
Exactly.
You feel the same way? It was kind of there at
Yes,
birth?
it was. It was nature.
Yeah, I agree completely. So for those parents out there that are real worried that if you let your sons get around this stuff, they'll get addicted to it. It doesn't have anything to do with that. It's either there or it's not there. And if it is there, you ought to be proud and you ought to support it. Agreed?
Yes.
Okay, well, listen, I wish you the best of luck. I hope 5 years from now, we are standing in a winner's circle with you with a top field dragster. Sound good?
Yeah, it came true once.
Okay, well, I got Mr. Bernstein. Those guys aren't going to last forever, right?
Yeah.
Okay, we've got the next ones on the way.
Greg is a fine young man, and we will follow his progress with interest. Right now, though, we're going to fire up the nitro burning engine of Drastic Plastic.
All right, we're getting ready to start this thing now, and I can tell you it is really cold out here, about 27 or 28. What do you think, guys?
Yeah, we feel it. Don't you?
Yeah, it is a little nippy, but most important is what these guys have to do, because this is going to be a hard motor to start when it's this cold, isn't it?
Well, we've had it inside most of the morning, so it still has some temperature left in it. We had blankets over it trying to retain some heat. It should be all right.
Okay, specifically, what are you going to do?
Well, we're going to start the engine. Bart Shaver here turns the engine over with the auxiliary starter, and I feed it gasoline to prime the fuel pumps and pull this wire off, which basically lets the spark plugs take off.
Right, essentially what you have here is you have the magneto grounded, and you want it turning before you unground it.
Yeah, we do that to give it a good spin.
Make sure it's got a good spin. Now, if you would step right over here to the side just for a moment, because I want the audience to see the auxiliary starter, and this thing looks like it weighs a ton.
It does. It weighs about 65 pounds.
Yeah, so you sure don't want to leave it on the car?
No.
Okay, I'm going to get out of your way, and by the way, I want to point something out to the audience. You can't see him in there, but Tom is in there in the driver's seat, and he's in full fire suit, even for this little thing we're doing for the television cameras, full fire suit, respirator, and everything. Nitromethane can be pretty hazardous, and you don't fool around with this stuff, even when you're not at the racetrack where all the stuff is required.
No, not at all. You don't play with it at all. It can be pretty dangerous.
Right, this is serious stuff. This is for the serious racers. So if you would, go right ahead and do your work, and we'll try to describe as we stand off to the side. And guys, are you ready to hold your ears?
Yes, we are.
We are. I saw him in that. It scared me. It reminded me of like the X-Men or something. That suit is.
Yeah, no, these guys are suited up for a reason, though. Go right ahead, guys, anytime you're ready. Okay, right. All right, girls, at the
Oh, yeah.
Woo! Wow!
At the end now, did you notice that the engine got a little bit quieter just before they shut it down? Because he was squirting gasoline back into it, so you don't shut it down on nitro, you're shutting it down on gasoline.
No, you were just losing your hearing, Bill, at the end.
The nitro cars are awesome, though, aren't they?
You feel it in your bones. It feels really
They just
cool.
absolutely shake the ground. Are you guys ready to go back inside and we'll discuss what they all
ready
did?
to drive it.
Ready to drive it. Anyhow, folks, we're going to go back inside now and describe or talk about what they just did.
When Drastic Plastic was running, we didn't even think about the cold. It was awesome. Now, let's go back inside and see what you have to do each time you run a nitro motor.
We have really got our work cut out for us now because there's so much that we want to show you. These guys, I was just ragging on them before we went on camera and said, gloves? You guys have gloves on? I've never worked with gloves on engines in my life. And he gave me the answer I hadn't really thought of. Why do you have the gloves on?
It's a hot engine.
I really didn't realize that's part of it too. When these guys rebuild these engines and they rebuild them between every round, they're working on a hot engine. That's got to make it 10 times harder. Now, Tom, where we got Tom? Tom, let me step over here. Tell us, what are these guys doing now?
Right now we're getting ready to service the motor. We'll change all 8 rods and pistons, check the sleeves, check the main bearings, look at the cylinder heads, look at the supercharger. Just general everything we can look at in an hour's time we want to look at.
And this is on every run?
Every run.
Susan?
It's kind of like we just had a race then, right? You got to do everything again.
That's what we're doing, exactly. That's why we started the motor out there and warmed up. Now, you probably wouldn't tear it down just after you warm the motor up.
No. What we do after we do warm the motor now, because of the amounts of nitro we run, we change the oil just after putting heat in the motor.
Okay, tell us who's doing what. And by the way, I don't know if you guys can see, we can see the oil?
Yes, you see the oil coming out to the pan.
Okay, so they're draining the oil first. What's going on? Who's doing what?
Okay, Ricky's draining the oil and he's going to pull the oil pan off so he can get to the connecting rods and we can get those out of the motor. And Bart's on top. He's going to take the injection apart, the supercharger off, the magneto out, the valve covers off, the heads off, so we can get the pistons out and look at the sleeves and the condition of the pistons and the rods.
Susan?
Okay, so he was explaining that the next step we're going to do is something with the alcohol mixing to get the percentage.
Right. As soon as we get started with these guys, because this is going to take them a little time to do this, while they're doing that, Tom is going to show us how the nitromethane is mixed, because you don't just run pure nitromethane, correct?
No. We always mix it down with methanol alcohol, and it's usually done by the temperature or what kind of power you're trying to put in the motor. Temperature is a big factor here.
Yes, Peggy.
I was just going to say, with this kind of just starting it up, really nothing could have broke.
Oh, yes, it can.
Oh,
It could have. Okay.
Yes, yeah,
I wasn't sure if it was the racing or if it was just the power of the force of when it starts that it could break easily.
It's both.
Right? Both.
It's both.
Combo?
The motor is making.
Okay.
Remember these. Now this, by the way, Peggy, what kind of a motor is that?
V8.
No, it's a very good, but I want you to say Hemi. It's also a Hemi motor. Remember when these were originally produced, even the very latest factory high-performance 426 Hemi was making 500 horsepower. These guys are making over 3,000 horsepower. Even idling, it's making more power than it was ever designed to make, so you can break pieces while it's idling.
Okay.
definitely.
And do.
Yes, definitely.
Yes, Susan.
So the guy who was sitting there in the driving costume or whatever you want to call it.
That was Tom. That was him.
Oh, that was him?
Yeah, it was
Oh my
scaring
God.
her. It was scaring
Yeah, that was scaring
Halloween.
me. But one of the guys was saying that they have a respirator on because in case the car goes on fire, then all of a sudden they'll have seconds to have some good air.
The biggest danger of fire in a car, particularly a car like this, remember, and I hope the folks can see this, the driver sits right back there. If you're going to have a fire or a supercharger explosion, the driver's in a position to inhale the fire. The biggest danger in a fire is getting the fire in your lungs, and it damages your lungs. You actually get the tissue in your lungs burned, and it doesn't heal. So the respirator is to keep the fire out of the lungs.
Yes, that's exactly what we do with them.
Okay,
So
now...
that's mandatory then.
Oh, absolutely mandatory. But not only is it mandatory, I want to make sure we understand this is a very professional operation here. It's not just mandatory. It is mandatory at the racetrack. We're not at the racetrack. They didn't have to do it. You put it on anyway.
I always do.
Yeah, because you don't fool with this kind of stuff.
No, we respect this car for what it is.
Peggy,
So we're going to find out shortly if there was any damage done?
very, very shortly.
Yes.
Okay, while they're doing that,
Bill, my eyes were tearing.
yeah, and they were holding their ears too, folks. They were really big babies. You should see it. Now you see the oil that's coming out, and by the way, the oil, every run, the oil's got to be changed. How many quarts?
13.
13 quarts of oil, and it gets contaminated with nitro every time.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, it doesn't look normal.
So is that the correct color? Is that why it's different?
That's not how it starts out. That's how it ends up.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, that's because of the nitro that's mixed in with it.
Right, the nitro ends up contaminating. Now, what I want to do is, as they're working, you can see that they're pulling off the, and Chuck, I don't know if you can see that at all, but they're underneath the motor right now, pulling the oil pan off, and I see he's got the valve cover off on the other side over there, and a good portion of the injector's apart. So while they're working, Tom, come over here and show us how you mix the fuel for one of these things. Girls, step right up forward here, please. Step right on in here. Go right ahead, and what do we have here?
Okay. This is a hydrometer, they call it. It checks the weight of the liquid that we're checking. Nitromethane is way heavier than alcohol, so with this, it'll tell us how much alcohol we've put in because it changes the weight of the liquid. To lead into this, we usually check with an altimeter the density of the air temperature, and now they've gone as far as checking the water content in the air. And we get all that information first, add and subtract up all our numbers, and then we know what number we want to achieve in the drum to put into the car.
Why don't you run straight nitromethane?
We almost could, but this is a very good tuning for us because we can adjust to temperatures and track conditions. Instead of making big motor changes, we can do it right here with the nitro.
Okay, but you're actually adjusting horsepower with the amount of alcohol you put in.
Right, right.
The more alcohol, the less power.
Yes.
Okay, and there's another reason for it too, is, boy, you talk about dumping parts. Run pure nitro?
Oh, 100% is deadly. It's hard on parts.
Really hard. And when we talk about hard on parts, if you would, just step back here for a moment.
Well, you guys it's already hard on parts, let alone, boy, can you imagine it's 100%?
Exactly. Just back up a little bit. We'll show you what we mean by hard on parts. If we come down here, Chuck, can you is this in the position you get a camera shot? This is what we're talking about being hard on parts. The connecting rod here, Chuck, I'm sure the audience knows. Peggy, grab the other aluminum one there, and I want to put it side by side so the audience can see that these guys bent the rod in there. No, it's the other way around, Peggy. It's a little upside down. Nope, there you go. There you go. Just like that. Okay, Chuck, is that visible? We've got a bent one here. He's nodding his head. He can see it. Okay, these are the kind, and these are expensive.
Yes. A piston and rod assembly probably runs us right about $200.
Right, so this gets expensive when you start bending these parts.
Yeah, we don't want to make mistakes.
Okay, go ahead and start your procedure.
Okay. First thing I'll do is, I already know it's 100% because I filled this before, and I'm going to put in what I think would bring it down. I need 86% in it, so I'm going to put enough alcohol in to get me close, mix it up, and check it, and then make a final adjustment.
Based on your experience.
Right.
Go right ahead,
I
yes.
noticed the bottle that you had squeezed in there when you were starting the car, it's not, what, you mix about this much?
No, that was gasoline, though.
Or that was the gas, okay.
That's gas, just for starting purposes. Go right ahead, Tom.
Sorry.
Susan, do you have a question?
No, I was just wondering, as far as now with the alcohol, do you have that pre-measured?
No, he's measuring it by experience. He's pouring. He knows. He's done this so many times. He's trying to get to 86%. 86% nitromethane, 14% alcohol. And by experience from doing it over the years, he knows about how much he needs. So
like a good cook, right?
Like a good cook. But what he's done now is he's poured the alcohol in, and now he's running air through it to mix it. That's all it's doing. It's bubbling.
I saw him before. He was actually sucking it in, and then he up to the point,
siphoning it.
Siphoning it with his mouth. And I was like, I hope that's not toxic.
Well, I guarantee you this stuff is all toxic, isn't it?
Yes, I don't get it in my mouth, though.
No, you be real careful with it. Yes, yeah, you have to be real careful with this. By the way, Peggy, while he's doing that, step back. I wanted to point out what we've got here. And Chuck, is this visible, or are we standing right now? Okay. No,
I want to point that out. There is a difference.
Okay, wait a minute. We'll let him finish here because Chuck can't see it on the camera. Okay, and what do we have now?
I've mixed the two together, and now I'm going to put it in a beaker where I can check the gravity of the liquid and see how much I've affected it.
Go ahead.
Reminds me of kind of a biology classroom or something.
Well, one thing.
Oh, there he goes. See it?
One thing you have to understand about motorsports, it's all physics. All science, all physics. Don't be deceived when you see that the cars are all colorfully painted and it looks like a show.
Right.
This is science going on, and that's really what motorsport is all about. Am I right, Tom?
Yes.
Did you have to take a class to learn this, or did you just learn it by?
Actually, there are no classes to really learn it. Usually what years ago in the past, you would just get to go with somebody, Chi-Town Hustler or Mr. Norm, and you'd clean oil pans and wax trucks and clean up, and they would teach you how to do this.
Every once in a while, you keep going. Every once in a while, we find a very serious youngster, a 15-year-old, a 16-year-old that comes along, and you can kind of tell right away if they really want to know or if they're just sort of hanging out. And the ones you really want to know, I think all of us that have been through this are more than willing to share the information.
Oh, undoubtedly. That's how to give a future to drag racing.
You're exactly right. Go ahead.
Kind of like the right way to learn. You learn from someone who's a mentor, kind of like the old way, like old tutelage or something.
And all motorsport works that way. All motorsport. How do we end up?
Right now, we're at 91% on the bobber, but we have to adjust it because the liquid will get thicker as it's colder and thinner as it's warmer. So we have to check the temperature, and that gives us, there's a chart you go by to tell what that does to your actual reading.
So where are we at now?
And the thermometer reads 48 degrees, so that would mean that this is colder than this hydrometer was set. This hydrometer was made for 68 degrees, so it's telling me it's up too high. It's showing me more percentage than I actually have because it's thicker. It's holding the bobber up. So I would subtract 4% from that, which would bring me down to 87%. So I really only have percent off. I got pretty lucky that time.
You'd probably go with that.
I would, yeah.
That's close enough.
I would definitely run it.
That's your little leeway there. You don't want to go over
Like a
too much more.
5%.
Right.
Is
Right.
that the
Well, within 1 or 2%.
Yeah, about one.
About 1%. So that's how these guys mix it, and they have to mix it fresh every time because the temperature is going to change it.
Well, track conditions change, temperature change. You may want to try to go faster than the last run because you figure the car can handle it, so you're going to want to put more nitro in it.
Okay, let's see how the guys are doing over here. If we step over here, Peggy, just for a moment, remember how we've explained the Hemi engines and all that thing on the show so many times? Now, he just stepped in front of it, but that's okay because I don't want to hold him up from working. This gives you an idea of one of the complications of the hemispherical engine, and the reason the valve covers are so big is because the valves are splayed. They're so far apart. And Chuck, can you see this at all? Can you see the valves at all? Now you can see it, I think. Okay, the reason being on the valves on a Hemi, the intake valve is angled like this. These are the valves here. These are the valve springs, and the valves are inside. So the intake valve is angled like this, and the exhaust valve is angled like this. So they end up with 2 rocker arm shafts instead of 1 on a wedge head engine, and they're spread apart like this, and that's why it takes such a big rocker arm cover, or valve cover as we commonly call them, to cover all this assembly. But this is the hard part. With a wedge engine, the intake valve, exhaust valve, intake valve, exhaust valve, intake valve, exhaust, they're all lined up in a line. This on a Hemi is what makes it so difficult, is because of the angles of the valves, but it also what gives you the good breathing and the nice combustion chamber shape. I'm sorry?
Similarity to
Step
like
right over there.
motorcycles? Because I remember you saying something about Hemis and motorcycles.
Well, most motorcycle engines are Hemi designs. Now, I want you to step back here just a little bit while they continue working over that. I don't want to hold them up. Peggy, you want to explain this because you were embarrassed before?
Well, you can see the difference in the shape. This one's more flat. Like you said, this is the wedge, and that's the Hemi. It's more...
It's not just more flat. Now, remember, this is where the valves go in.
And there's-
Now, you can see that
well,
these are
there's
lined
two
up. They're side by
together,
side.
And these are opposite.
Exactly. This one comes in from this angle, and it gives it that real nice combustion chamber shape, and it gives
Right.
wonderful breathing, no sharp corners going in and out.
But do
And
you see-
also,
it's more noticeable, though, side by side, for someone who's,
who's not used to looking at it, I
Right.
suppose. The other thing I want you to see is this is a normal connecting rod. If you'd hold this up, and Susan, if you'd pick up that other one next to you there, that's also, nope, turn it the other way, so the audience can see it. There you go. Okay. This is a normal connecting rod, which you've seen us do, like we put it in book racing, we put in my
Right,
small block
in book,
Chevy.
yeah.
And these are the expensive aluminum rods. They're several times more expensive, and they're the reason
more
you do them is
lightweight,
they're
right?
lighter.
Mhm,
Exactly.
they're
That's the reason you do it, and they're also quite strong.
And they're all greased up right now.
And they're all greased up, so you guys can go ahead and put it
It looks
down.
wider. It just looks thicker, and see, look at the difference in the width.
Well, exactly. Well, it has to be
Even
because aluminum, while it's lighter than steel, is also not nearly as strong. So you're going to have to make this bigger and heavier to make it as strong. But it comes out not as heavy as a steel rod would be.
Right.
Of equal strength. Now, one other thing. Stay put there for a minute, girls, if you would. One other thing I want to mention, and Tom, if you would come over here, because I know you guys are real proud of this, and you should be. Step right on over here, please. I happen to notice on their sign that they have for their displays, I happen to notice that you guys made Hot Rod Magazine.
Yeah, it was a big thing in my life to finally get in Hot Rod Magazine.
That's a big thing in anybody's life.
I'm real happy, real impressed by it. He did a very nice article on me, and I'm real happy.
Well, I'm going to tell you something. Those of us that have been in motorsports for any length of time know that there are certain very prestigious motorsport publications, like in any other kind of activity, and Hot Rod is probably the oldest of all of the Hot Rod magazines.
It's the first one I ever read.
Exactly. So that's a big deal, and I want to congratulate you. And that's not small potatoes. And they mentioned stuff here, New Wave Nitro Junkies. What are they talking about?
Well, that's kind of what he named us, people that can't really afford to go run John Force, but want to really run nitromethane. So we're coming up with little differences, body changes, little different motor combinations, so we can still go out and have fun and race, but not have to try to beat John Force, because that's just not in my reach.
Well, let's talk about this. Let's go back over by the girls and everything so they don't get lonesome. Go ahead, Tom. Go ahead and precede me as the guys continue working away. And by the way, folks, what you're seeing here is what goes on in between every single round. These guys completely pull the motors apart. You know, we talk about life expectancy on motors. I don't think General Motors would accept a life expectancy of 6 seconds on a motor, would they?
They'd be real unhappy.
Yeah, but Chrysler Hemi they're just fine with that.
They don't care anymore. They just like to sell parts.
Boy, do they sell parts on those things, although I'm sure it's not a profitable thing at all. We came over here because we want to talk about a couple things. Number one, what you guys are doing, and I've talked about this a little bit on the program before. We haven't done a lot with it because we really haven't had this kind of a forum. The nitromethane thing. The problem with the nitro cars is the enormous expense in running these cars. John Force, it takes $10,000 to make a pass. John Force, Joe Amato, any of these guys. So that means that none of the really small strips, the little Midwest strips or anything like that, can afford to have these guys come in, so the audience never gets a chance to see a nitro car run, and it's awesome. I mean, they don't just shake the ground. You can feel them. Do you know what I mean? You can feel them pounding in your chest.
Yeah, they definitely get your attention.
No doubt about it. So how do you do it if you can't afford to make those? Well, these guys have come up with this. Tell us about it.
Well, it's just some way that we can go to the littler tracks and still run nitro and keep the fans, give them something to see in that, and make it affordable to everybody so we can all have fun.
That's right, and one of the things you've done is you've taken about 5% off of the top of the nitro motors. And when I say this sounds like a small deal, and I think it's kind of a small deal, but it's apparently real important. One of the things you guys aren't allowed to do with these cars, and what class do you call this?
We call it fuel alters, nitro fuel alters.
Nitro fuel alters, and one of the things that they've done, if you'll notice, there's only one magneto in this car. You're only allowed to run one magneto.
Right.
And the John Forces and those guys all run two.
Yes.
Now that does not sound like it would make that big of a deal in horsepower.
It makes a big deal. You can't run the volume of nitro through it because you can't light it. Nitro is a very hard liquid to actually light. So with the two magnetos, they can light more and burn it, where with one magneto, we can't do it.
So you can't run as heavy a nitro load?
Oh, not even close.
Okay, so that's one of the ways that they can maybe keep the cost down a little bit. They're going to make 95% of the power, but that last 5% goes from $1,000 a run to $10,000 a run to get that last 5%.
The faster you go, the more cost.
Well, and by the way, folks, that's no different in Indy cars. Indy cars is the same thing. Anybody can run, and I don't know the numbers right this year, but anybody can run a 220-mile-an-hour lap, but it costs another $1 million to go 224.
Oh, definitely.
Right. So we're trying to, you guys are trying to operate at that 220 rather than the 224 to try to keep the cost down.
Right. Well, this way the fans don't have to pay $40, $50 to get in. The track can afford us. They can afford it, so we can at least break even or make money. It just works for everybody this way.
Okay, now we've got questions everywhere. Susan?
Yeah, now he was telling me earlier that it's a petroleum base. Can you guys explain to me more of the chemical parts? Because it's kind of, we were doing biology before, now we're doing chemistry here.
Well, it's actually all chemistry and science. Well, let me just give you this much. When we say it's petroleum based, we mean that it's a derivative of petroleum. It's one of the petroleum products. It's base of petroleum. It doesn't come from wood, doesn't come from trees, it doesn't come from corn. It's a petroleum based product. Peggy?
I was just going to ask what what'd you say, the magneto?
Magneto.
What is that?
Tell her.
That's
lights
the
fuel?
No.
Or
Remember last week we were talking about a distributor, and I said what a distributor does is it distributes sparks to each one of the cylinders. Another, when you compress that mixture in there, you've got to somehow light it, and what you need to do is light a match in there. So what a distributor does is a distributor distributes a spark at the appropriate time, and a magneto, the difference between a magneto and a distributor is a magneto doesn't need a battery. It creates its own electricity internally. Well, the system on your car is a regular distributor that has an outside electrical source. If I'm not saying it right, go ahead.
No, that's all correct.
Yeah, so a magneto controls, so you don't have to have a battery connected to anything. Just turn it and it'll make sparks. If you spin it, it'll make sparks.
How many class cars are in your class? Do you know?
Through the country, I think we've counted like 20 of us right now.
About 20 of us. So this is, and like I say, these cars are so cool to watch run. They really are, because they've got bodies on them and they're colorful and all that sort of thing. Now, one other thing, when we were outside running the car while I was up on the stand, I happened to notice that we've got a little crack going, and as we started talking about it, what I didn't realize, and everybody come with me, what I didn't realize, step right on over here, folks, everybody. Years ago, when I used to go racing, what we always did in the trunk, sticking out of the trunk of the car, we always had the oxyacetylene tanks so we could do welding at the track. And it's a little bit harder trick than you might think it is, because you can't lay them down, you've got to stand them up, and it's real hard to stand them up in the trunk of a car. So we would have the trunk open as wide as we could and have the tanks you know what I'm talking about, right?
Oh yeah, I've been there.
Well, apparently that's not the case anymore. Just in a portable sense, these guys can actually TIG weld, am I right?
Yes, with the new advances in welding and everything, they've come up with downscale TIG welders that are as same as the big ones, but they're more affordable and they run on a lower voltage, so they are something
use them
that
in the
we can
field.
use. Yeah, we can use them in the field. You could use it at your house.
Go ahead and demonstrate this, because this I couldn't believe that you can actually do this in a portable sense anymore, because I know that I'm a welder and I've had my own shop for years, and somebody wanted stuff heliarc welded. We had to bring it to the shop to get it done. Now they do it in the field.
This seems really, really neat.
Oh, it really is, and as soon as I...
You just kind of like step on it?
No, actually, that's the electric pedal. That's what you would, a better name for it would be the heat pedal. The harder you step down, the more heat that it makes. And if you would go ahead, as soon as you're ready, Tom, go right ahead. We're actually going to weld up a little crack here while these guys are working. And by the way, Chuck, you can take your camera shot back over to the guys that are working. They've got the supercharger off of the top of the motor already, and they're getting ready to pull the heads. Go right ahead, Tom, anytime you're ready. I'm sorry?
New little toys for the boys.
Well, there's more. I'll tell you something. I've learned some things. One of these days, years ago, we did shows on welding. We did two oxyacetylene shows, a stick welding show, and a TIG welding show. And they've come out with stuff now. Step right back in. They've come out with stuff now that I absolutely have to show. This stuff they didn't have when I had my own shop. For example, you're going to watch. He's going to take. Are you going to flip? Oh no, you've got one of those trick hoods. Oh, he's got one. This is so cool. I can't even believe it. One of the hardest things is you can never look at the flash on these things when you're heliarc welding. You can't look at the flash, so you always have to flip your hood down when after you're laying under a car and all that. It's really hard to get at. You got to flip your hood down so that you don't see the flash. These things have a special kind of a shield that you can see through quite easily. You have it down. You can see it through quite. And go right ahead, Tom, because we're running out of tape here.
This is really
go
neat
ahead.
for someone like this. I mean,
No, this is very cool. And now he can see quite well, and as soon as the flash goes off, as soon as he gets that flash, that thing automatically makes the shield dark. And when he lets go of it again, it gets light again. It is, in this position, it's not a problem. But I'm going to tell you something, when you're laying underneath a car and you can barely get yourself in a position and there's no room to flip your helmet down, that is a huge advance. When I saw that, I said, I've just got to have one if I ever went back into my shop again. Anyhow, we're running out of tape, so we're going to have to change tapes here. Did you get it done? Yeah. Yeah, we're such sticklers. We found a little crack. They took care of it.
Watching these guys work is amazing. They're all expert mechanics and welders, yet they take their skills quite for granted. Fixing the crack in the frame was no big deal to them. You can't help but be impressed as you watch them work. Now let's see what they found inside the engine.
Once again, we're running drastically out of time. We've got the pistons and rods, at least most of them, coming out now. What are you guys doing?
We're pulling the pistons out to check them, and then we feed it 8 new ones every run like this. And we're going to inspect the sleeves, we check the bearings, we pull the main caps down on the crankshaft, and check the bearings on the crankshaft for the mains and the rods, and then we put it all back together.
All right, well, you're putting in, now he just pulled one out. He's just pulling it, he's just checking the rods and he's checking the caps as he just explained what he was doing. And something else that I didn't realize, one of the things that you should know, that these are aluminum engines, aluminum blocks and that, and the aluminum blocks do have replaceable sleeves. Remember, you can't have the pistons and the rings running directly onto aluminum, so these are sleeved cylinders, and I am surprised these guys tell me that these sleeves are easy to replace.
Oh, it just takes a couple seconds.
That's amazing. Peggy, what do you think? Is that one okay?
Looks okay.
Okay, Chuck, I hope you can see that. I hope he's not blocking it with his back. He's got a little tool that he goes in there with and whacks it out and pulls out the cylinder sleeve. And by the way, just starting and running the engine, just what we did before, starting and running the engine, you actually got a little score mark on a cylinder.
Yeah, I think we had a little bit too much percentage in it for the weather conditions, and not that it wouldn't run out like it is, but if we're going to do it, we're going to do it right.
They damaged that quickly, and now you guys are going to put one of them back in? Is that what we're doing here? Pardon? I'm sorry.
Is that a push rod down there?
No, you mean that big?
Yeah,
but no, that's a tool for taking out the sleeves, and now it's a tool to put the sleeve back in. Go right ahead. Don't let us hold you up, because we're running out of time.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
Yeah, these guys have been working non-stop, so we got to give them a lot of credit. Give a hand to them.
Believe me, the real heroes in motorsport, Tom, and I'm sure you'll agree, you're a driver, the real heroes are these guys, aren't they?
Oh, they make it or break you.
There's no driver anywhere that doesn't say the same thing, and I don't think the public ever believes us. Without these guys,
you're dead in the water.
absolutely. Now, I want to break this up a little bit. Are we putting one in now, guys? Go right ahead. What he's got a compressor, a ring compressor here, so you can squeeze the rings in. And by the way, if you'll notice, it's not like you see at a gas station when somebody winding a compressor on there that they make the same compressor for 5 or 10 different kinds of pistons. This is all developed just for this application, so these guys can easily get these pistons and rings in and out over and over. He taps it down. Notice the guy on the bottom is going to catch it so that the rod doesn't damage the crank on the way down. He catches it, picks up the rod cap on the bottom. I don't know if that was visible or not, and the rod cap is going on.
Is that a push rod inside?
No, push rods. The push rods are totally missing.
Oh, is it missing? I'm just trying to guess, trying to get it.
That's okay. No, that's okay though.
I'm guessing.
The compressor, is that like that supercharger thing?
No, this is a tool we're talking about. And by the push rods you're talking, no, I want to finish. We're running out of time rapidly, and I want to answer your push rod question.
Okay.
Push rod is part of the top end of the motor. These guys are deep in the motor now. The push rod wouldn't go until the end. I'll tell you what, we're going to stop right now because I want to make sure we don't miss anything, and I know we're almost out of time, so please, folks, don't go away.
They tore down the entire motor in the 20 minutes it took us to tape this segment, but they have to do more than rebuild the motor between rounds. Watch.
Well, an hour just isn't a long enough show to show you all the work that these guys do. It's absolutely incredible. Complete engine teardown. In addition to engine teardown, Chuck, come in real tight here. I want them to see this is the multi-plate clutches that are now used in all these kinds of vehicles. When we say multi-plates, you can see all of the drivers and drivens in here. And if you tilt your shot down even further, Chuck, we can take a look and see what we've got here. This is one of the things that's really responsible for the super low ETs that we're getting now. These are called slipper clutches, and it wouldn't be possible without this kind of technology. Unfortunately, we don't even have time to go into it, but essentially what it does when you let the clutch out, the clutch slips, and progressively as the RPM comes up, the clutch grabs harder and harder and harder through a series of weights and all of that. And the dirtiest, nastiest job they've got here is the guy that has to take these clutches apart and redo the plates on every run. Am I right?
Yes.
And whose job is that? Ricky?
That's my job.
How come you get stuck with that? You don't have seniority?
I don't know. I just come to the track in black and I leave the same way.
Boy, I'll bet you do. One thing I want to tell you, folks, I've watched these guys work all afternoon and everything. Tom, you've got great confidence in these guys.
Oh, undoubtedly. Without it, I couldn't race without it.
With no question about it, I'm going to tell you something. I've watched him work, and he has every reason to have great confidence in these guys. You've probably been doing this for a long time.
Yeah, about 20 years now.
And enjoying it?
I love every minute of it.
Boy, you guys are really good. I don't know if you know it from an outsider watching you guys work. How long have you been doing it?
About 20-some years as well.
Okay, you guys are good, and it shows. It really is. And by the way, folks, we've got to go. We're completely out of time. I want to thank the guys from Drastic Plastic. A wonderful, wonderful opportunity to take a look at what it takes to make a fuel car go. Girls, have you learned anything today?
Yes.
That's good. We got to go. We're out of time.
The amount of work it takes to campaign a nitro car is unreal, but when you see them run, you understand.
Nitro cars, you have to see them in person to really appreciate them. Unfortunately, we're out of time with only enough left to acknowledge the fine work of our award-winning production team, including Chuck Itzenthaler, John Papke, and Tom McGrady. Special thanks to JBTV's Jerry Bryant. Music is created for us by Fireside Recording Studio in Westchester, Illinois, and by independent artists Roger Pauley and Jerry Herbert. Of course, we have to take a moment to thank the stars of this edition of Motorsports Unlimited: Susan Russell, Peggy O'Donnell, and our host, Bill Wildt. Me, I'm Tim Murtaugh, reminding you that if you ever get to see a nitro car run, give some thought to all the effort it takes to make it happen. Thanks for watching. See you next week.
This program made possible in part by support from ABC Auto Parts, located on Ashland Avenue at 138th Street in Blue Island, Illinois.
Motorsports Unlimited is produced by Bill Wildt, president of the Motorsport Advancement Crusade.
This program made possible in part by support from Jimmy's Red Hots, located on Grant Avenue and Pulaski Road in Chicago.
Motorsports Unlimited was created to raise public consciousness understanding and appreciation of the motorsport community and their activities. You can contact us by email at msutv.com or email us directly at msutv@aol.com. We enjoy hearing from our audience and encourage you to let us know what you think.
So that's it, another edition of Motorsports Unlimited and the lovely ladies of motorsports. And be with us next week because we'll have something real exciting. Bill Wildt's going to have the lovely ladies, and just about anything can happen right here on Motorsports Unlimited. Every week at this time, we bring you the best in motorsports. So be seeing ya. Bye-bye. And keep on rocking.